Hi friends, it's me, your Sinister Sewist. Today I'm going to teach you a seam technique called the whip stitch. You basically hem two pieces of fabric and you whip stitch them together. And this type of stitch is great for sewing smaller pieces. So I actually use it when I'm making underwear. I use it in making headwear as well. And I'm also going to be featuring a tool for pressing my linen, and this is a great tool. It's just a linen glass slick, and it's just basically it's a lump of or a blob of glass, and this is wonderful for pressing your linen. I haven't tried it out on wool or anything like that, or silk, but it works wonders on linen, and you will probably, if you have one and you're not sure how to use it, I'm going to show you how to use it. I'll be using also a wooden board to press on. So I mentioned headwear and using this stitch or seam type on headwear, and I'm just going to give you a little sneak peek of what my headwear looks like that I use this type of stitch on. So you can see that I have hemmed the edges and whip stitched them together, and that's the inside. And then if you look at the outside, that's what that looks like. So get ready, and I'll see you at the end. Okay, so I've got my linen here ready to hem, and I could just finger fold it and press it with my fingers, or I could use my handy dandy glass slick. This is a great tool for pressing linen. So in order to get a nice sharp fold, I actually dampen my linen, and I'm just using a spray bottle, but I suppose you could dampen your linen by running it through water and then sort of letting it dry a little bit. So what I did here is I just folded down, and what I do is I will fold and then run the slick across like this. And no one ever really showed me how to do this. This is just how I thought it made sense to use it. So your mileage may vary, but this is how I use the slick. So just rubbing and making sure I don't rub too hard, because that will stretch the fibers, especially if they're wet. So just be careful of that. Once you have done the first fold, you can fold it again and then press again. Okay, this looks pretty good. I'm ready to fold and press my other fabric. Okay, and I have prepared my linen thread by waxing it with some beeswax, and I'm just going to do the hem stitch. You could also call this the overcast stitch. I did a video on finishing seams, and this stitch was featured in that video, so I'm not really going to explain much about it. If you just watch, I think you'll kind of get the gist of it. My first few stitches are always a little wonky, so I apologize for the imperfection of those first few stitches. So I moved to my lap because it was easier to see what I'm doing, but I'm basically just hemming all the way across, and I'll be doing that with both pieces of my fabric. Okay, so I have both pieces hemmed, and what I'm going to do here is I left that last bit attached at the end so that it would just be easy to start whip stitching my two pieces of fabric together. You can pin if you want to. I don't usually pin unless I'm going around a corner or a curve. So what you're going to do is just begin stitching. This is a whip stitch, so you're just always pushing your needle either from front to back or back to front, but you'll just do that consistently to create a whipped stitch around the edge of that folded fabric edge. And just do that all the way across. If your stitches are too big, you will not have a strong seam. So make sure your stitches are fairly small and make sure they're pretty even as well. All right, so I'm just finishing up this seam. I'm going to make one last stitch, but add a knot at the end and hide the end inside the hem of one of those sides like this, and then snip my thread. Now let's talk about perfection. I like things to be pretty nice and tidy, but none of my work is ever perfect, and that bothered me for the longest time until I was able to see extant textiles in person. And I realized that those things are never perfect. Mistakes happen. So give yourself some grace if your pieces aren't perfect. All right, back to the seam. So I've opened this up a little bit, and I'm just going to hand press it with my fingers, which works just fine. But you can iron this with a regular iron. But I want to try out my glass slick on this. So I am going to spray the linen just ever so slightly, and then I'm going to rub the glass slick on to flatten the seam out. And look at that, it's like magic. Awesome. And I'm going to go ahead and flip it over here and give it a press on this side as well, just to nicely flatten both sides of my seam. And there it is, the finished seam. Pretty tidy on both sides. All right, so I hope that was helpful. I hope you learned a new thing today, and I hope you had fun. And as always, let me know if you have ideas for videos or if you have questions. Ask them in the comments below. Have fun, and I will see you next time.